Oh, thank you, sir. Do we want to go by
I bribed him.
where we were and
I
then?
just better take this.
Okay. What we switched to?
Well, this is on page, this is the revised goal. So, comment on that.
We're halfway through the packet.
Okay. All I see the revision is.
Between now and, do you want us to comment on that?
Yeah. If anybody has any comments, Tucker, if you feel makes more sense what was there before.
Was just trying to channel, I think, what the board was intending in a way that might translate to the community more meaningfully. So, no pride of authorship, but comments are great.
And my comment is, I think, do we remind me now? Do we want goals to be measurable? Okay. So words like work to ensure, that's hard for me to measure that. I don't know what kind of work, and what is ensure. I mean, you and me. It's like, what's the operational definition of ensure?
You want to just say create 24 new units?
Well, even something. I mean, I just, do we want, I thought we talked about building permits being, we had some conversation about the way to define that. I don't care about I don't care how we define it. I just think it should be defined.
Issuance of a building permit.
Okay. I mean, and it's assuming that's reasonable.
To be more direct thing to create 24 new units.
Of course, there was also talk about buy downs of existing, so the building permit wouldn't be the measure of that.
Okay.
Yeah, so like for the state, create has different definitions. So, for example, a 40B project, they consider in terms of units counting when the comprehensive permit is issued immediately. So they would consider that creating new units. You have to continue to pull building permits and so forth and construct in a timely manner, but your credit comes earlier.
So is our goal here to get credit?
I would say,
Or is it really or is it to create housing? Because we as a board kind of talked a lot about that. So it's an important distinction. Because
I mean, I think in terms of the shy, it is to get the credit because it's the only thing that blocks things that we may not want to see. But some of the other goals speak a little bit more to the creation of other needed housing.
in the way the credit works with the state is, so you would initially get credit for, say, 24 units. If you didn't pull a building permit within the first year, you would lose the credit.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm just, is there a way
So
to say?
the creation would be half.
Yeah.
Maybe, so at the end of each year, 24 new units are on the shy list or something. I don't know.
What do you guys think?
I think that's a great way to capture it, because then you're protecting against losing ground and
Repeat that again, Jim.
At the end of each year, 24 new units are added to the shy list. I don't know if those are technical terms that are appropriate.
End of each year?
Because they said work to ensure the creation per year, 24 per year.
Oh, I see. So Don, you're saying the other goal, or maybe that was Tucker, the other goal was at 3. That we I mean, they all can be eligible, but what helps us make sure they get actually built? Is that part of this goal? Or is that kind of just implied?
it's implied because there are things you have, like we were talking about, that you have to do even after the initial counting to ensure that they stay on the list, meaning build them.
Well, we're really talking right now about number 3.
Well, as I was saying, is 3,
And I was confused because it says safe by September 21, achieve safe harbor status. And that was housing goal number 3. And then it switched to the affordability.
It was defining the safe harbor by the 24 notes. That's what Vi is doing here.
Yeah, it was kind of combining your original goals 1 and 3.
Okay, that makes, if you do
Okay.
24 a year, we're in safe harbor.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you added an extra on top of it.
Yeah, you're creating and getting this.
So those, okay, so you deleted, you combined the board's housing goal 3
with 1.
with 1, and then did you add a 3, another one?
Yes.
Okay. So maybe it'd be helpful for me to know on the board, why the group we have.
do you want to move on from 1? Or do you want to talk about adding?
Oh, I thought you took us to 3, sorry.
Well, because someone said that
Yeah, you know, I know.
1 is in 3 a little bit.
Oh, the old 3.
What's that?
The old 3.
The old 3, right. Yeah. So are we good with 1? Do we have that?
Yeah, they did some work around data and research and outreach and action steps too. I don't know if they wanted to present that.
Is that on zoning?
Yeah,
How's
the
the brush
zoning,
pan?
the guideline review.
The difference is the data and research.
That's good. We didn't know that before. Progress. Any comments on the data research?
Is number 5 is,
So where's the data research?
I guess these are the underneath the goals.
I don't know, is that going to be part of what the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is already doing? Or is that part of the conversation at all?
Oh, okay.
Because in the conversation about number 5 of data and research, the HPP guideline review of consulting, is that something that will fall under what the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is already doing?
That's intended to be the trust fund's work. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm still looking for the data collection line item.
So if you go to housing goal number 1, if you turn the page at the very top, the housing goal 1, data and research.
Hard to follow because the numbering's not quite right. But this is good.
Okay.
So are these items that are under housing goal 1, data and research?
There should be 1, 2, and 3. My computer got a little.
Yeah,
Wow.
and are these new?
There's some clarification on the one that's numbered 5.
Yeah.
That's an action that's already underway by the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And the others were just clarification of notes that were on the previous.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Because on the data and research, we don't always have to create new data. We can use what's out there, or what's currently, and then it'll be a process.
Right, and the new goal number 3 relates to data collection as well.
For process, are we at the point where we have to talk about who's doing the data research and when, and or is that?
I think that can stay at the work group level.
Okay, all right.
And some of that may exist. We might, Chuck and I need to talk about how we might start chasing that down.
Yeah.
I'm assuming most of
We
it's coming out
ultimately
of
want to get
Tucker.
to that level.
Okay.
Who and then when it'll be, is it, a week, is it a month? That kind of stuff. So we're going to need that detail, but probably not at this minute.
Good.
I'm wondering, under data and research, I see under action steps, determine land and financial support required. If under data and research, getting an idea of what other similar sized cities or towns, what sort of funding they're putting into it, if that would be part of the data and research, or if it comes further on, that would be fine. But I think a lot of other communities are spending a lot of money, and it would be good to understand what scale.
So funding provided in similar size and type of community?
Yeah.
Is that under goal one, data and research?
Yeah.
That's just to see if we're, doing more or less, or
I think to start to get an idea, I think more and more there's community spending a lot of money. And I think identifying, especially with the shy list, if we're really trying to hit the 24 units, having a very clear idea of what numbers we're looking at.
And I think we should know that, but it's not just a money issue. I mean, I sent the stuff from Aspen. If you want to waive a parking space, it's $38,000. If you want to add 100 employees, you've got to have housing for 65 of them. And that's just that's required in their core. So, it isn't just a throw money at this. Some of it is how else do you incentivize these things?
And I think it's not just a throwing money. I think it's both sides of those have to be looked at. But I think Aspen and Tucker, I think Aspen's spending $10 million.
Yeah, I mean, it's not any one thing, but I don't think there's getting around the fact that Aspen, it's a population of roughly 10,000 year-round people. They're spending $10 million out of their $62 million operating budget on housing. So something is required.
Yeah, and then they're capturing some of that back. But I think understanding how much other places are spending to start is important.
So I was reading this morning, there was a discussion about communities that have given tax subsidies to companies that come to locate in their community. And the study showed the history of communities doing that. These are their words, not mine. They did add more jobs. 8 out of 10 of the new jobs were held by immigrants, and the cost of public services for those new employees far outweighed any economic benefit that the town got. So it's this interesting cultural kind of. And they were just talking about the pressure the politicians are under to do something, but it really doesn't. And this kind of longitudinal study didn't demonstrate that it had positive economic impact on the community from a business development standpoint.
It has very positive impact on the developers in the construction industries. Those guys are making a lot of money doing this, and the towns are paying the back end of it. So it's kind of an unfunded mandate.
Jim, would you be able to pass that article on?
It's today's New York Times. Did you get the
Okay.
Times?
Definitely haven't got that yet.
Pardon?
I definitely haven't gotten to that one yet today.
Okay.
I mean, but no, it's a good one. That's essentially.
It was
to
under
be honest,
business, on the
under
business
business.
section.
That's what I lived through in Ireland, was where that's exactly what happened. And then the construction dropped out, and then there were ghost estates. And housing was a major, major issue. So, and then you're building for people who are there to build. And then once that building stops, then you've got empty houses. But I think here it's not so much that we're trying to attract. We've already attracted. Now we're...
I don't know. I think that's a conversation, because the more we build, the more we attract, and the more we. So.
Tucker, is that kind of because I feel like that's a conversation that keeps coming up, this whole conversation around, well, if we build more affordable housing, we're bringing more people here. Is that something that can come out of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund or any of this data and research? Because I feel like understanding that and who's going into our affordable units would be...
I mean, sure. I mean, it would be, I think it's something the trust could talk with Judy about and see if she might have some data from, other communities and so forth. I mean, I think we have some of our own anecdotal data in terms of, Satcham's Path had 200 applicants, one of which was an off-island applicant, and they happened to have lived here and left over the housing situation and wanted to come back. I mean, according to Richmond, they have 700 expressions of interest in their rental project, which hasn't even broken ground yet. And according to them, all from on-island inquiries.
Yeah, my point wasn't that we attract creating a subsidized or affordable housing attracts them, but the development of the community through new construction and whatever has created this, this homelessness, and and the people that generated it, the employers, the developers, the builders, the owners of the homes haven't done what we're thinking about doing, which is be responsible for housing of our own employees.
I see.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's kind of I think the board, prioritizing, addressing the housing issue is commendable. I think that, if we're not taking active steps that really can produce the results needed, like 24 a year really as a minimum, then we're going to be subject to the Surfside crossings, depending on what one's opinion is about whether that's a good thing or not a good thing for the island. Because I don't see the state changing its opinion about housing creation anytime soon. The governor and lieutenant governor are on a mission to create 135,000 new housing units across the state in order to simply sustain our economic viability as a state. So I think this is definitely a step in the right direction.
With what you guys what you were saying, Jim and Matt, the 40Bs come in and they put in, 100 homes, 25 go to affordable housing, but you have 75 new homes which need more services, which need more homes, and that's where we feel 40Bs don't help us.
I agree.
As much as some other projects.
So if we want to get out in front and not be subject to, then we can be doing projects that are 100% affordably restricted at the variety of levels we need here, rather than having to accept a 40B with 25% affordability. I completely agree. It's a question of whether do we want to take control of our own destiny or not.
Like if we did another Sachem's Path, for example, we would immediately get a safe harbor from that. But, 24, we're not under 80,
Right.
sorry. Well, we'd come close. Say we could do one
Right.
where we got 24. But it would probably cost something like the tune of $10 million to subsidize it, because you'd have to buy enough property to do it. Maybe not 10, but the CPC subsidized it by $3 million,
I think,
and that was at lower construction cost than we're at now.
I think Matt and I had looked at it back of the envelope, not including the land value, but between the CPC and what the state kicked in. The units themselves were subsidized around $270,000 a unit, like cash, on top of the land value, if I'm remembering it.
I think you're off by about 100, but it was a lot of money per unit.
Up or
Because the
down?
floor, I think it's higher.
You think it's higher?
I think the roads, I don't know if you have the roads in
Maybe not.
there. Yeah, so add the roads in.
The public subsidy per unit is
Yeah.
370 without the land.
Without the land, the public subsidy was
Yeah.
a lot.
Well, when we went on the tour with Crystal Purgate, one of the HAC representatives said if they were selling those on the open market, they would have sold them for at least $1 million to recover their costs. So, those are all in the 300 to 500 range mostly. That's a huge.
There were even
difference.
some that were like 280, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a little under 3.
The
This is
80s.
Sachem's.
Yeah.
So, okay.
And that gets into a conversation of what kind of housing for that income level.
Right.
It's another social conversation.
Yeah. Yep.
But I think we need to understand how what the incentives are and how this all works. I don't think that there's very many people in Nantucket that really understand how the tax credits work and how much money is left in, how much money is available through that if the town set up its own entity to do this, or in some manner, that wouldn't be paid as profit to a development, that could come back in as more housing. So there's things like that once I kind of started to really look at it and understand it, there's a lot of money there. I mean, these guys potentially making $6 to $10 million on year 2.5. next door and how Keene's gonna make that, potentially. And so that, you know, say they only made half that, we put it out to bid for somebody else, and we had a, you know, I can't think of the fancy name for it, but we had a development arm here, like Aspen has, that was doing that. We could take the land we already have, do the same tax credit that people are buying, they're giving you money for that, and it could all go to housing. So there's ways to look at it differently than the traditional ways to do it, that's all.
I think we got at some of that in goal 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are we ready to move on to goal 2? That was a good conversation. You guys go with that? By September 2021, finalize a plan to address housing needs specifically for town employees, year-round and seasonal, and have broken ground with X amount of units.
How many units?
And my first reaction was, I think broken ground is pretty aggressive, maybe not. But when I think of having to go to town meeting and finding the land, and I don't know. So, but obviously you all talked about that and thought that was reasonable.
Well, there's already a group that Libby's assembled that's, you know, we're already diving in. We're going to be discussing the beginnings of the action plan tomorrow on identifying the need and a whole bunch of different data elements in terms of land inventory and et cetera. That, I mean, I don't think that is an unrealistic date in my own opinion. But Libby, maybe.
Depends if the number is 15 units or 2 units.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But
Seasonal and year-round is sort of 2 parts to that.
But you just haven't weighed in yet on the complications of this kind of effort. And you know, and we've talked about this will all have to be negotiated with the unions every morning.
Well, so that's in our action plan is going through the different options that we think might be available or not available with town council to, there may be ways to address it that aren't head-on in the manner that you're talking about. And we're exploring those.
But it has to be, well, it's,
Yeah.
So that's in the process of being looked at.
Absolutely.
Two things, how to do the union part, and then also in the data research. I think that's already started. I think inventory of all town-owned properties and what we can do in each one, and then the unions.
Yeah, there's a work group that's working on it.
How do we decide, or when do we decide what X is?
It's a good question.
Should we decide now and then tweak it? Or should we wait and
I don't have a basis to understand.
process-wise?
Yeah, process-wise, probably need some more research out of that work group.
I don't have any kind of basis to pick a number yet. And I'm just thinking about as we go public with this, you know, and somebody's going to say 21, well, did you do it?
You're certainly gonna need that number before your presentation.
Right. Is 3 outrageous?
So there's a point on housing goal 2 about outreach that Amanda might want to address, the survey question.
We talked about surveying town employees, and I think we need to be very cautious about how we do that. We are starting a staffing study with Novak Consulting Group the end of May, and they're going to do a survey, so maybe we can incorporate some of our questions with their survey.
Instead of having just one survey just
Yeah.
for this that stands out.
Mm-hmm.
Could push fear everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yep.
It's a good idea.
And Tucker, wasn't there thought about the using the data platform?
Yep, that's on our list.
According to them, 1.7 million people visited Nantucket last year. According to their analysis. They just threw that number at me the other day. Is that a lot or is that too? Did we think it was more?
Sounds like a lot.
Yeah. I don't know, I didn't ask him. It's a science inspector.
Yeah, break it down by day.
Yeah.
It'd be fun to kind of drill into that.
On housing goal 2, anything else that we need to talk about, think through, besides the number of units? Anything stick out? Was housing goal 2, is that pretty easy for you guys when the work group? Or did you guys kind of go back and forth on that?
Well, I think it's the challenging part. I mean, there are different complications, as Jim mentioned, that in terms of union, et cetera, that we need to sort through with town council, and then a definitive number determination really is going to be a result of working with either the data platform or the survey study group and the department heads to really get at, one of the things we want to take into account is succession planning, sort of maybe, we may be okay today, but we may have some department heads who are planning to retire in the next 3 to 5 years. And so, anyway, there are a number of different factors, and so to get to a really meaningful number, it's going to take a little bit of time to do that. That number may not be ready at the end of May.
Will you be thinking about, congregate, I'll use for congregate or groups of units, or spread throughout the community? Because we heard last time, I think, people, some participants, department heads, I really don't want to live next to the person that works for me.
I mean, we're initially looking at the land we have available and where else.
So that would be congregate rather than.
Well, and then thinking about what land might be suitable for a department head type of setting versus a middle manager, employee type of housing.
I think we were talking about both.
Exactly.
Sort of,
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about a dormitory over
Per
here
season.
for a season.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just if you've got a solution you're thinking about, and it's something that's further along like this dormitory, I'd be more comfortable with the number. But
I had brought up like how great that dormitory at the yacht club came out. What a beautiful example it is of something that could be built, and that we should
And you were right on the number.
carry on that.
It's 3.3 million. 36. It can house up to 36 people.
I had a feeling it had to be more like that kind of number.
Yeah. Well, I think it expanded from the
36
original.
people.
Yeah.
And 3.3 million was the total cost?
Yeah.
Excellent.
But they owned the land.
Yeah, they own the land.
and we do.
Yeah.
Too, but
Yeah.
our number is going to be higher because of all the municipal procurement requirements.
Right. And they just, Peter, I toured it last week, and he just gotten a letter from the Preservation Trust where they awarded them Best New Construction of the Year. Yeah.
They always do a classic job.
Process-wise, is there anything you want to hear from the board on goal 2?
Except, I think they accepted the goal except for figuring out X.
Right.
Should we do a little algebra?
Why?
We do it every day.
I mean, for the purposes of trying to share something later this month, is it?
The goal is later in June for a presentation
Okay. Okay.
to ease your
Okay.
anxiety about that.
Thank you.
So are we okay waiting a little bit till we find some things out
Yeah. Yep.
with what land we have and what we can do on each land, on each piece?
I'd be comfortable with not having a number in there personally.
Well, that's where I was going, but then you want to measure too.
I understand. Talk out of both sides. This one's hard. This is harder. This is really hard.
I think just finalizing a plan is going to be a big accomplishment because we have union situation. There are, laws that we have to follow, but fair housing, and there's public funds, and there are all these things in place that are all extremely complicated. So I think just getting rid of those hurdles is going to be a big accomplishment.
And I think
Before you even talk about the number.
going through the process, you're going to find out a bunch of other stuff that you're going to say, oh,
why don't we go do that instead or something? I mean, I just,
Yeah,
so.
definitely.
I mean, you may also find that you have a need for like 60 rooms for seasonal employees or something. I'm just picking a number. And that you only have enough land to build 40.
Right. Oh, yeah, right.
So there are some other things that are going to define what you actually can do.
Yeah. Definitely.
No, so do you feel like that plan is a 3-year project?
I don't really have a concept of how long that's gonna take, but I think you have to figure out all of those pieces before even jumping to the number of units. Because it may be, 0 units.
Should that phrase come off this goal? Does this work on the plan?
I'm fine with coming off for now.
Yep. Mine too.
It could be part of the plan.
There you go. The plan will include
Internal goals.
Yeah, just take out and have broken
Take out
ground.
And then if we need to,
X.
Yeah.
Where's my pen?
So we'll stop for the period at seasonal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just say alternatively, I'm not advocating this, but alternatively, you could say, I mean, we know we have land, for example, that I think Andrew's on considered for department head type housing on Okawah. We know we have space available here for seasonal dormitory. So you could put sort of a minimum number in each case, i.e. 3 department head housing units and a minimum of 18 or 36 seasonal units if you wanted to have something.
So I'm assuming that your plan will include a wide range of housing accommodations, not just acquiring or building assets. For example, it could include rental subsidies and a bunch of other. Are you thinking about that too?
I would say not so much necessarily rental subsidy. Right now it's like the stock, it's the availability of inventory.
We talked a bit about how it would be managed too.
Yeah.
So we don't have to do anything. It's a drill.
just yell over it. Are you good with 2? Taking that out.
What I was going to say is that if our plan is done in 2 years and then we can announce that we're going to start building something, then we're just ahead of the game.
Yeah, there you go. I like that.
But there may be an opportunity, say Surfside Crossing does get built and there are condominiums available for sale. Maybe that is something that the town wants to invest in.
That's the type of thing we definitely are thinking about. What's
I know there's
already
been talk about
happening that we can take
buy-downs if something
advantage
like
of.
that happens.
Yeah.
And then you may rent them.
Yeah, we may rent them, we own them, yeah.
Is that part of the data and research of existing things that's happening? I know in goal 1 it was.
Yeah, we have, these are the things the work we've talked about tomorrow, and all the things we just talked about are on this list to investigate.
Good.
Yeah.
There may be the ability for someone to realize home ownership with some kind of a covenant in terms of a town employee that then would have to be sold to another person coming in when they decide to leave.
Right.
Like the way the covenant program works.
You're basically doing a covenant with so just a year-round residential covenant, basically. And they do that.
There may be an income cap.
There are some with income caps, and some are just you have to be year-round. It has to be sold in year-round. Yeah. So there's ways to do that.
Or it has to be sold to someone else who works for the town.
Yeah.
The nice thing about that is it's almost blind to what the job title or income of the employee is. So I would think it'd be more even. I like that concept.
Yeah, one thing I will say though is I think we have to be careful about doing, sort of apartments and that type of thing. 30-something kids with no parking is appropriate downtown. And it's, and how Kingston is sort of appropriate here, where you're close to the Stop and Shop. You get out into the hinterlands, it's not. So whatever we do, whatever we plan, it has to be appropriate for the area that it's cited.
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes, and sometimes that's forgotten. You can have less parking and more density if you're in the town. If you're within I think it's a half mile of, shops and places.
Yeah.
Or 5-minute walk, whatever the number is.
I think we're good on goal number 2. Are we good? You guys good?
Everything else is good, number 2, all the other stuff.
I think so. Well, I didn't hear anything.
I didn't have a question.
Everything else is good with number 2, data research, all that. I didn't hear any objections to anything. Amanda, probably not right now, but was there anything else that you wanted to address with unions or anything?
So I think somewhere I think in here we have to recognize the collective bargaining agreements, and I think that
Like in data research or something.
I don't know where. I mean, maybe under certainly it's going to be under data research. It'll be under action, so wherever you think would be appropriate.
Is this part of the strategy to keep us on time?
It's working.
Were we adding something about collective bargaining in goal 2?
Letting the team. No, I didn't. Just letting the team come up with the language is what I suggest.
Okay, how's goal number 3? By 2019, determine in greater detail need at all affordability levels, 30% to 175% AMI for the community.
And this is a new goal.
Yes.
Okay. This is the new goal. So determine in greater detail. Do you need to have any more detailed wording in there? Plan?
I mean, the reason I suggested it was there are questions from a variety of different people. I use David Worth as an example, who would say, I'm supportive of addressing this issue. What exactly are we solving for? So we all know the 10% number as the requirement, but sort of beyond that, and the 10% is really restricted to 80% AMI levels. And we all know there are needs above that here for policemen, fire, teachers, etc. So, to be able to answer for ourselves with greater clarity, what is the number we're trying to solve for? And we know it won't ever be perfect, but I think we can get closer than we have today. So that was the intent.
So is it like another housing needs assessment that Housing Nantucket did, something like that?
I was thinking this was in relation to, I think I maybe mentioned at the last meeting like this, there was a market study group that a couple of small cities had used that I got to hear about at the National Planning Conference. I'd be interested to approach them. It sounded like they're kind of crackerjack at what they do, and I'm sure there are others out there as well, but to research, whether a firm like that gets beyond just, I think a lot of what's in the workforce housing needs assessment and HPP is census based, and we all, have limited confidence in the census numbers for Nantucket in terms of our actual population and housing need and so forth. So a greater dive into coming up with a number that we have confidence in.
In which income levels?
And yeah, exactly.
And why is that important, and what would you do with the information?
Well, I think it's important so that we can look people in the eyes, like David Worth, to say, this is what we're solving for, and that I think it would help the community in understanding better why certain, why we're wanting to take certain actions in order to address need. I mean, just sort of, I believe.
So it's more of a public relations, communication strategy, like maybe to avoid the reaction we got from the neighbors on Tacoma, whatever that's called.
Yeah, I mean, there are always going to be some folks who, don't like change, period. But I think for the broad community, I mean, just like if the police chief is coming and saying, we need a new dispatch system and here's why and here's the benefit, I think this information would go to, why do we need to take these actions and why is it important and, what levels of income are we serving in the community by doing it?
I also, just to add, Tucker, I also feel getting this kind of detail allows us to, it informs future projects. And I see this as really adding the opportunity for value for the money that we spend, so that what we build, we know we're really building it for the Nantucket community and not just this sort of generalized census-based study, because I think we really do know that a lot of the people that we're building for aren't really captured in the census. So understanding what they want will help us build better and spend our money better.
So goal 1 and 2, thank you guys. Goal 1 and 2 is they're connected to, building units in some manner. And goal 3 is more just capturing data and research to make more informed decisions on a public outreach level, but also for
in future years.
Yeah.
Is that kind of if you look at the 3 goals?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that sums them up perfectly. And again, I think there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of information, a lot to learn from the things that we've already done. So I would love to capture that and to tweak them.
And that seems doable in 3 years. Goal 3. It's probably a multi-year study.
This says by 2019.
Wow, that's fast.
I mean, they're normally within 12 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we comfortable with 2019?
For a study?
Okay.
Do you have any idea what the cost of something like this would be?
Not yet.
I'm just thinking by 2019, where's the funding for the study coming from?
Could be the trust fund.
Well, yeah, but we didn't say January 1st.
No.
That means by December 31st.
It does? Okay, I just want to clarify that.
By 2020?
So we have a year and 6 months. Okay. Any other thoughts, questions about goal number 3?
Maybe then under data and research, just adding in finding out how much a study would cost and where that money would come from. You didn't hear me? Just adding under the data and research, finding out how much that would cost and how it would be funded.
Yeah, that's exactly. And just for a point of reference, I think the HPP update with Judy there was roughly a $25,000 expenditure. And yes, I would anticipate the trust fund taking this on. They've defined moderate income for the island as up to 175% as far as their purposes go. So this would fall within the scope of what they're trying to help promote.
I thought it was really helpful last time when the chief said, let's be mindful of using income ranges rather than percentages.
Yes.
Of AMI.
Yep, absolutely.
Just as you go through this,
Yep.
I think it'd be helpful.
The dollar amounts, Yep.
What is that 175% number? Do you know?
It's approximately 175,000.
Oh.
Yeah. 100% is 99.5. Yeah, for family of 4.
I mean, mostly all $1,000 under the number for the most part.
For a family of 4.
Okay.
Yeah, when you go below 100, it's not a straight line formula. When you go above 100, it's pretty much straight line.
So that was great that she brought that up. So
Yeah.
We know it, well, we know it now, after years of looking at it, but anything with the public,
Yeah.
have it both in there.
Yep.
And that's kind of, I think, the easiest way, but for someone who's single, what would be the 175% or a couple?
I don't want to misquote it. It's,
A single maybe in and around 100.
yeah, let me see if I've got the
I
table
know.
with me here.
Just because I think that in the conversation as well, that's actually a bracket that gets left out quite a bit, are the single.
Mm-hmm. I'll get you the number, Rita. I may not have it right here with me, and I don't want to misquote it.
Yeah, no, that's
Single
fine.
as in one income versus two incomes,
Yeah,
right?
one
'Cause
income.
You could have 3 kids or 1
Yeah.
kid, that isn't.
Yeah.
Which is what
No.
virtually most of the police officers.
You say
How many
single,
times are they gonna test?
single or family of 4 or just single?
Single, it would be interesting to know, or just to have available easily, that income information for single and a couple, so that, say someone is single and they're making 150,000, they're going to think they're in the 150%, but they might actually be at the 200%. Just so that that is, we always start with the family of 4, but there's a lot of people on the island who need housing who might find some of it misleading if we don't have the information there.
Of the population that wants to retire out of their big homes and has no place to move to.
That one, too.
And I think when we get to the point of how you implement this, the strategy should be to work from the bottom up, not from the top down. Like we should be trying to fill the 60s and the 30s and the 80s, and then the hundreds, and work our way up. The development industry is going to want to fill the top ones first because they make more money on those, and they're going to want to go back to the other ones or not do them. And I think there's a huge segment of the population, the ones that are like the people that are piled up in substandard housing with 2 or 3 families to a house. They're not anywhere near the $99,000. They're nowhere near those numbers. Working 2 jobs, and 2 people working 2 jobs. And so I think that's, my own opinion, that's the largest need, and we should be filling those first. I think too often we end up talking about the need, if we're filling for the town's needs, that's fine. We know they're paid and we have to fill them. But I think from the island itself, it's and I think that's those segments are forgotten. And too often the people talking about it aren't thinking about those people. They're not thinking about all the guys I grew up playing soccer with. They're thinking about their son and daughter and how can I get them a house, and I think that's, that isn't thinking about the island as a whole, I don't believe. We have to be careful.
Those are the units that need to be subsidized financially, though.
Or we have to change our rules to encourage those in some manner. We have to change rules and regulations to encourage that. Waiving fees and,
They'll have to, there has to be an offset.
Exactly.
And a substantial offset.
Right.
Or we embrace 40Bs if X percenters, if 50% of them have, they're making a lot of money on the other, they're selling houses for $2 million.
I want to see them meeting something other than the 80%.
So if we're producing 24 units a year, then we get the leverage with the 40B. We get to say exactly what you're saying. This is what we want. But right now, we don't.
Yeah, exactly. So we need to get to the point where we're able to negotiate with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they can still happen, but we have a say then.
So maybe but this is a good discussion. So maybe we should put all of our efforts into getting off, because I'm always torn shy versus non-shy, should we put all of our efforts and energy in getting to the 10% and forget about all this other stuff?
I think that's our number one priority. The other stuff is it has been designed as more planning.
But it's limited.
We could say nothing for town employees. We're not going to do anything for town employees. Our number one goal, all of our financial resources, all of management's time, all of the board's time, all the housing is going to be focused on meeting the 10%.
I don't think that would be a good strategy, because some of the stuff we have to do for the town employees is gonna take 2 or 3 years, and it's studies and things that we can be doing.
Provocatives.
Yeah, I know, we can do some of that
Okay.
concurrently. Maybe we shouldn't be building that, but
Also, if we get a shovel on the ground over here, we've met it.
Oh, okay.
So there are some things that just may immediately take it off our plate for a year.
So when they break ground, we know it?
Well, maybe.
You can tell me later. I don't mean to take up
If we weren't in an appeal next door, we could be working with the developer to get those units on the shy list like today. And depending on when we put the shovel in the ground, we will definitely get the credit, but the credit always ties back to when were the units first eligible to go on the list. So in the case of Six Fairgrounds, they were first eligible to go on the list as of December 21st last year. So if we break ground on them later this year in December, then we'll have a whole nother year of safe harbor. But right now, we cannot claim the safe harbor.
and explain how that differs. If it was a 40B, when does a 40B go on the list?
It's the same
The same year-long deal.
It's the same year-long deal, and it's more or less the same timing. It's when so December 21st is when the special permit had been granted and was filed with the town clerk. It's the date of filing. So the same for the comp permit with a 40B, sorry. But with a 40B, it is automatic with the filing of the comp permit. With something under local zoning, you have to do what's called a local initiative project or local action unit, and there's extensive application materials that are prepared by the developer that need to be submitted in order for them to be approved and considered eligible for your list. And I mean, in the case of Six Fairgrounds, if it weren't under appeal, we could be working with the developer to produce these things and get them counted. Right now, they have no incentive to do it.
If it was a 40B that was appealed, that wouldn't matter, or it would if it was appeal.
How is it considered, whether it's under appeal? I don't know the answer offhand. Yeah, Ilana will be here Thursday. She'll know that answer.
But I think the reason I asked the question is we shouldn't be scared of just because something's called 40B. There's some positives from from that standpoint. Like I asked the question when we did this, and people were at the board at the time was like, well, we're kind of scared of the 40B name. That'll get people mad. Well, they're going to be mad at us anyway. So if it had been a 40B, it would be on the roll a little easier, a little quicker. Now there's more. My understanding is more work for the developer after. That it's a little harder to keep it on, or there's some reporting requirements and things that are a little different later that they don't want to do. But so I think the 40B, doing something as a 40B helps you get on the shy list quicker in some manner.
Yeah,
and I think people should just realize that. That's.
I think just in general, this is a little murky for me from creating a policy perspective as a member of the board. I'm just putting it out there. I'm not saying we do anything different. It just I feel like I'm
if you assume that the appeal is continued, so we're on an expedited track for court date in September, and then the judge has however many months to issue a decision. If you taking that into account, the quickest way for the town to reach safe harbor is probably this Surfside Crossing project, because that, by definition, is a 6-month process, and though as presented, they have 39 units that must meet the shy list eligibility requirement, and I would say we should be talking to them about buying down 6 more units to get talk about buying down 9 more units to get to 48, which is 2 years of safe harbor.
So maybe that's something, I mean, the board's gonna take that, if that's a position somebody's recommending from town admin or something. That's a policy discussion the board could have about, do we want to embrace it? Because right now, it's like, we don't want that. We don't want Surfside Crossing. At least that's what I think.
Like, I think the Affordable House Trust Fund is likely to have a conversation with the developer about doing just that, and then they would come to you all to say,
Oh, okay.
Here's something we'd like to do.
Okay, good.
Anything else from town admin, Roberto, chief? Nothing, any of this?
So no change to goal 3, it stays as it is.
Okay, so I didn't see any. This is pretty much it's a goal for data research and information Republican for us to move forward. So we all kind of shook our heads. With. You take a picture, make great.
I just do.
Matt, Don, do you have anything you fine with?
No.
Great.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So, any other thoughts on any of this housing before we move on to?
Good work.
Yeah, it was a good conversation.
Good work on the team.
Well, thank you, Tucker and Leslie and everybody, and Don, and everyone who's in that work group.
So could we, Jan, would you mind circulating sometime the members of each of these work groups?
Circulating the schedule to the board?
The membership.
Sure.
Who's
Yeah.
and maybe a list of when they meet too.
Yeah, for transportation, we have Matt as the SB, environment, Vita, but anybody we can't have 2 at each, right? Without it getting too open meeting
Well,
law.
then we're gonna need to know in advance so we can post the meeting, take minutes and get the minutes approved and.
But if they just sit in the background, that's allowed.
Technically, if there's 2 or more of you, the meeting should be posted.
I thought it was with more than multiple meetings or something. If it was just one, it wasn't a.
I think we're probably having multiple meetings here.
Pardon me?
We're probably having multiple meetings.
Yeah, we'll have to reconvene the housing group after we get the other 2 goals done to start working on the data and the action steps. So I suspect those will be meeting over the summer.
Oh, I mean, if more than one board member really wants to go and wants to be there, then I think we should have to take minutes. Okay, all right.
Or we could switch off.
For example, if you and Matt are really into transportation, you both really felt passionate about it, that's a good problem to have. And so then I think if that happens, then we can get to it. But if not, switch on. All right, moving on to next steps for strategic planning for transportation goal. We got 15 minutes for this. Okay, so we're meeting on what's tomorrow, transportation.
Yes.
Tomorrow.
Yep.
2:30. And that is that Rob McNeil?
It is
You guys, town admin?
Rob, Andrew, Mike Burns, Chief Pittman, and Libby,
And Matt.
and Matt.
When are we meeting?
Tomorrow at 2:30
Okay.
at the conference room downtown.
Would you repeat the transportation goal?
Pardon me?
Would you repeat the transportation goal? I didn't see it in the.
It's not in here.
Okay, I can't
We're only
remember
looking
it.
at housing today.
It was demand, parking demand management.
Okay,
And then the second one was the
I just,
The sidewalk.
the sidewalk,
Okay.
the pedestrian
Okay.
walkways from Mid Island to downtown.
okay.
You guys are good.
The environmental subgroup, which is Rita, Rob, Roberto, and Libby, meets on the 14th before cabinet in the chief's conference room to review the environmental.
What time again tomorrow? 2:30? Sorry.
2:30.
Thanks. I didn't.
So there's we're reviewing changes for those goals.
Yeah,
We don't have any
like we
of
did today. We'll go through those goals and strategies at that level, and then should have the content that you need for a presentation.
Will we come back here just like this and review transportation environment?
On May 22nd at 11 a.m.
Is that in there?
Yes. At the very bottom.
So we want to discuss the board presentation to the public. What's next? And so you suggested June. You guys are looking at
When we looked at the select board's meeting schedule in June, and it looked like the 20th was the best date for that. Is that your recollection?
Yep, and as the board knows, we were trying to get to our every other week meeting schedule in June, and I think Erica may have sent you something recently. I think what we're gonna do now is meet every Wednesday with the exception of the 13th and focus on this on the 20th.
we added the 27th because there's end of the year transfers and always last minute things,
Appointments,
right?
yeah.
Fiscal year. That's something Matt, you and I have talked about, we always take a step back a little bit in the summer when we go every other week. But then again, it's Nantucket and we're all volunteers and it's very busy. So where's that balance? So we added in one more meeting in June. I know it's not a game changer. But do you want to talk about before that presentation? What does it look like? Who's presenting? Is it 5 slides? Is it 10 minutes long? Do we open it up for public comment? What's the Janet, Chuck, Libby, board?
Well, it's the board's strategic plan, so
Right.
the board should present it. And when we met last week, we talked about presenting a very broad picture at this point in June. That we would identify the goals and some of the strategies, broad strategies that we had talked about to the public for public comment, while we continued to work on the details of the action steps, implementation plans, and all of that.
Right.
For further, that would have a longer presentation in probably late September or early October.
Does it make sense to have a timeline to show the public how much work has been into this? Even if it's something super simple, when it started.
Yeah, I think that's important that the public knows where we
didn't just meet one time.
We started this in April 1st, whatever, April of like 2016. It was on the agenda for our meetings on a regular basis. We engaged in whatever. I think it's important to know that how much time we spent on this.
So a 15 or 20 minute presentation, I can open up and do the timeline, the why we're doing this. Do we want to split it up between board members and everybody can take a piece and do the broad stroke?
I think there's some value in you as chairman doing it.
Doing the whole thing?
Personally, I just...
I don't mind talking.
I just think of it like if we think about it, I just...
There's a lot of different ways to skin this cat. I can do the 5-10 minutes overview, and then we can all kind of chime in and talk and say, whatever you would say.
But if you kind of did the whole big picture, and then we could even be assigned to make comments, just so it was a little like it wasn't just spontaneous, because we're trying to. It's all about the show. Okay, so Jim comments on X, just so like to make and that would be to either reinforce something that we want to make, or make some kind of editorial comment about it, like why we're doing this. I don't know. So
I like that. I think it gives it a balance of clarity, having you do the broader explanation, but then it makes sure that everyone knows that it's the board's plan and not just Jason Bridges' plan.
And you're a great speaker too, so that's just another advantage.
Thank you, Jim. To not make this a huge thing, does it make sense to have a couple slides? I only say that because some people are visual readers, and some would listen, whether it's on the radio or TV.
Just read something the other day about that, said that they've done a study recently, says people cannot read and listen at the same time. So if you put your whole slide up there on the thing, they're not listening to you.
Right.
They might not be listening anyways, though.
I think some kind of picture, some kind of visual
graphic,
like
something
you have
memorable.
about housing, you have a-
Visual is different than reading.
Yeah, you have a
Yeah.
picture of a good example of housing, like a picture of something else.
Yeah.
When I've done TED Talks and stuff like that, it's only a vision, it's just a picture of something, and then you're telling a story.
Throughout the whole thing.
It's
Rather
through
than
the whole
like-
thing.
Yeah.
It's a picture of
So you're
us.
not trying to go through slides and, I agree with, I like that.
It's pictures, so we talk about, housing, there's this picture of a house, right? It's just so people can visualize what you're talking about throughout.
Yeah.
So is it better for me to come up with what I'm gonna say and then work with Valencia or somebody about what pictures to use? All right, I'll do that.
Yeah,
I'll
I've
do
done
that
TED
tomorrow.
Talks, you should be a pro at this.
Outreach strategies, moving on, outreach strategies to planning board and EDC. We have 30 minutes for that.
It'll
I
take
don't know if we need that long, but what do we think about?
Well, this goes to your objective to reach out to other boards before it went to the broader public, particularly to engage the planning board. Since this is planning, that's planning. We wanted to get the ducks lined up in a row. So the conversation was how to go about doing that.
Yeah, we talked about a joint meeting with NP and EDC because that incorporates the planning board and a few others. So
Right.
the broader group that it might be. Strategies for me.
I think that's good. It may make some sense to preview it with the chairman and vice chairman of the MPDVC. I don't know who the vice chairman is, but just
That's the chairman.
And Andy Lowell. Oh, Bennett, that's what I meant.
so. I just so we don't. So they are. They're not. They have some awareness of it before.
I like that idea. Is that
That's a
something,
good idea.
something that I would organize myself, or would I go through? I've never had a joint meeting with the EDC
I'll
before.
text Matt right
I mean,
Probably between Janet and Chuck and I, we can reach out to them maybe and figure out a date, or we'll talk to you, Jason, about some dates. You and Don, maybe we can talk about that tomorrow at the agenda meeting.
okay.
And then we could have this initial sort of informal meeting with the chairs and vice chairs.
Yeah.
And then try to find a date. Maybe they come to one of your already scheduled meetings. Maybe you go to one of their already scheduled meetings, or maybe there's a totally new time to figure out what they might prefer.
Are we looking for feedback from them, similar to what we're doing with the town departments? Are we looking just to have a conversation, to let them know what we're doing? Speaking of intent and goals.
It could almost sort of be a mini presentation for what you were anticipating doing to the general public. Maybe in a little more detail, a little deeper on some of the, maybe have some of this paper in front of folks. I wouldn't bring this paper to the meeting in June, but you might want it in front of this group.
Yeah, so information and feedback.
And I think we should go to them personally, because we're, they should feel comfortable on their turf. Their meeting, we're a guest, we're kind of like guests. I don't know, just my thought.
I think it's a bad idea for them to come to our meeting and us sitting up there and them all sitting in the audience. Their meetings are here, so whether it's one of their meetings or whether it's another special meeting, it should be in something more like this room.
So they have a scheduled meeting, their annual meeting is in June. Mike, do you know the date?
Third Monday. I don't know offhand what is the third Monday.
So I don't know if that, may work
It's the
with your
18th.
schedule, or if it needs to be
It's only 2 days
before that.
before presentation.
And when do they meet in May?
21st.
So maybe we're
6
talking,
o'clock on the May 21st is the.
it's pretty aggressive.
Yeah, but we're talking about meeting, like, just with the chairs and vice chairs first.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And
Well, you
behind
all,
closed doors,
you all can work out where we meet now.
and then go into a formal meeting. Am I right? Yeah,
If we want their feedback and don't want to make it look like we're presenting something to them just before we go to the public. We probably shouldn't do it 2 days before their annual meeting.
Maybe they'll have a special meeting if you talk to them.
Sure they will.
You can ask that of the chairs and vice chairs.
Oh, it's May 8th now, so I guess it's more of a timing thing. We'll work to meet with the vice chairs and then talk to them at that point.
Yeah, you probably want to wait until after the 22nd when you've had a chance to see the next work groups. But we could certainly try to set something up for post 22nd now. We'll work with Libby and
Okay.
And we're talking the planning board and NPEDC?
The planning board's part of the NPDVC, so if you meet with the NPDVC, you'll get
Get them all.
everyone, and groups or representatives from other groups as well.
And who are the chair and vice chair of NPEDC right now?
So Nat Lowell is the chairman, and Andrew Bennett is the vice chairman.
Okay, thank you.
In planning, who's vice and chair?
We haven't had a meeting yet, so Monday the 14th, we'll have new officers. But Barry's the vice chair.
Directors, the
Back there right now. Okay. Good. Anything else on that? You feel comfortable? Good with that. So Burns, you're like, you're doing one of those.
No, I want to compliment this whole process because we do update the long-range transportation plan beginning in October, so this effort would help inform that. And just looking at the goals 1 and 2 and some of the desired conditions, I'm interpreting desired condition is also means vision. So this aligns pretty well with the existing plan already.
Great.
So I don't think there's going to be very contentious meeting because this does align with those objectives already in place. I would just add clarity maybe on use of vehicles, because that's an element of the vision of the transportation plan is managing the use of vehicles is the over the high level goal. And these goals, the parking management systems are almost policy or projects that help implement that type of vision. So something in the spirit of use of vehicles rather than limiting vehicles or some kind of paradigm on what the strategy is for the community.
Okay.
If you understand what that means. Yeah.
A little bit.
Okay.
I'm saying managing the use of vehicles versus limiting and something.
Exactly.
Won't the transportation group be thinking about this?
That's what I was just
Yeah,
gonna say.
that's tomorrow's discussion.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
maybe
So
that's
you
the
can,
main.
you guys can get into those weeds tomorrow.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so the next meeting for us, May 22nd, same time, same place? Same place? Okay, 11 to 1, make sure that's in my, it's not in my calendar. Anything else, any other comments? 12:13, get out of here early, a little lunch. That's it? Motion to adjourn? So moved. All those in favor? Thank you. Thanks for everybody. Thanks for coming.
Is there